The scent of lilies mingled with the stale air of resentment inside the funeral home. I stood in the shadows of the lavish viewing room, quietly observing as my sisters, Victoria and Eleanor, performed their grief like seasoned actresses, dressed in sleek black Armani, makeup flawless. They moved through the crowd with the effortless grace of royalty presiding over a court. I'm Diana Matthews, or, as they preferred to call me well into adulthood, Little D. I'm 34 now, the youngest of three, and the one everyone quietly agreed had missed the family mark. I didn't follow in our father's high-powered footsteps or inherit our mother's social flair. Instead, I became a social worker. I drove a decade-old Subaru. I lived in a modest duplex while they lounged in hillside mansions. But they had no idea what I'd been creating behind the scenes. At the center of the room sat Mother's polished mahogany casket, encircled by towering floral arrangements that screamed taste, wealth, and performance. She had passed quietly in her sleep at 72, leaving behind a life steeped in charity events, society columns, and exclusive clubs. She'd also left behind a will, a final act that would strip away whatever illusions remained in our family. Victoria clicked toward me, heels sharp against the marble floor. At 38, she wore her age like a crown, convinced it gave her automatic seniority in every conversation. Her husband, Marcus, trailed behind with that insufferable air of entitlement, old money arrogance bolstered by inherited influence. The viewing ends in an hour, Victoria said crisply. Then we need to go over arrangements. Arrangements, their code word for the will reading. Eleanor soon flanked us, every golden hair in place despite the summer humidity. At 36, she had the cool calculation of a chess master, always planning 3 moves ahead. Her husband James offered a solemn nod, likely already counting their anticipated share of the estate. We've spoken with Harrison Blackwell and Associates, Eleanor said, referencing the law firm our family had trusted for generations. The reading is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Just family, of course. I nodded, sipping water from a flimsy plastic cup while they toasted with crystal stemware. Even now, in the presence of death, their hierarchy remained intact. Marcus chimed in, voice oozing with the same patronizing tone I'd endured at family dinners for years. It might be wise to temper expectations about the inheritance. What Marcus means, Victoria interjected, as if translating for someone dim, is that Mother was intentional about rewarding those who demonstrated success and responsibility. Success and responsibility. Their polite way of saying, Diana gets scraps, if anything. But I'd braced for this moment. Every family gathering where my non-profit updates were met with blank stares. Every holiday when they exchanged Rolexes and designer bags while I offered handmade gifts. Every birthday where their kids' elite education was praised while I mentioned mentoring inner-city teens. They'd written me off as a sentimental do-gooder destined for burnout. And I'd let them. Because while they were polishing silver spoons and spending trust fund dividends, I was quietly building something else, something real, something powerful, something that would turn their world upside down. The next morning was overcast, a steady drizzle casting the city in gray as we entered the marble lobby of Harrison Blackwell Associates. The firm occupied the top floors of one of downtown's most prestigious towers, all dark wood, antique rugs, and oil portraits of founders glaring down like judges. We were ushered into a large, glass-walled conference room. Robert Harrison, the family's legal steward for decades, sat at the head of the long mahogany table. At 65, with silver hair and a reputation for precision, he opened a neat stack of manila folders like he was performing surgery. Victoria and Marcus sat together, smugly comfortable. Eleanor and James flanked the opposite side. I took a seat alone at the far end. It was exactly as it had always been. The firm extends its deepest sympathies, Robert began. Your mother was a remarkable woman who left behind a significant legacy. That legacy? 3 luxury homes, millions in investments, and the controlling interest in Matthews Associates, the boutique consulting firm my father built from scratch. Altogether, the estate hovered around $15 million. Not astronomical, but more than enough for lifetime comfort. Robert adjusted his glasses and opened the folder. Your mother's will is extensive, he said, and she made her intentions perfectly clear. And in just a few minutes, my sisters were about to learn the one thing they'd never seen coming. That the disappointment they ignored for years, had become the one holding the real power. Victoria leaned in, just slightly, her poise tightening like a spring. Across from her, Eleanor's manicured fingers tapped a silent rhythm against the polished mahogany table. Their husbands sat stiffly beside them, faces painted in grief, but their eyes flickered with anticipation, already tallying up their imagined fortunes. Robert Harrison cleared his throat and began. To my daughter Victoria, he read, I leave the Beacon Hill townhouse, valued at approximately $2.3 million, along with its furnishings and my collection of antique jewelry. Victoria's lips curled into a slow, satisfied smile. That townhouse had been in the family for generations. Of course it was hers. To my daughter Eleanor, Robert continued, I leave the Martha's Vineyard estate, valued at approximately $1.8 million, along with the yacht Serendipity and my curated art collection. Eleanor's hand found James's under the table. She blinked back tears, whether of grief or relief was unclear. That house held childhood summers and years of whispered dreams about raising her own children there. Then Robert paused. His eyes met mine. And to my daughter Diana. Here it comes, I thought. A polite pat on the head, a restricted trust, a sentimental token with a clause about meaningful use. I leave my love, my pride, and my apologies for not understanding sooner what she was truly building. The room froze. That wasn't inheritance language. That was confession, surrender, awe. Victoria snapped upright. What does that mean? Where's her portion? Robert looked down again. Diana is to receive nothing from the estate, because she has already built more than I could ever give her. The documents in her possession will explain everything. Every head turned toward me. I calmly opened my briefcase and laid a thick folder on the table. I wondered when we'd get to this part, I said. Victoria's color drained. What documents? I flipped open the folder and began to slide the first page across the table. A property deed, dated 18 months ago. That, I said, is the deed to the Beacon Hill townhouse. Eleanor snatched it, reading aloud in disbelief. This says, you own it. I do. I bought it when Dad needed liquidity for his cancer treatments. He didn't want either of you burdened, so we kept the transaction private. Victoria's hand shot forward, grabbing the page. But Mother lived there. We have keys. You do. I nodded. Because I let you keep them. But check the deed. Diana Matthews, sole owner. I've been your landlord for over a year. Marcus made a sound somewhere between a cough and a gasp. But, the inheritance. I slid another document forward. The Martha's Vineyard estate, also mine. Purchased 2 years ago when the consulting firm was bleeding cash. Another quiet deal, Dad's request. James blinked. But the will, Eleanor's supposed to inherit it. She can't inherit what our mother no longer owned. Robert blinked, visibly shaken now as he reviewed the paperwork. These are all legitimate. Diana, when did I afford all this? When did I go from family failure to someone capable of buying multi-million-dollar assets? I asked, sliding over a new folder. Let me help you connect the dots. Inside were corporate filings, financial statements, and portfolio summaries. Matthews and Associates, Dad's firm? I'm the one who quietly saved it from collapse. I've owned 60% of it for the last 3 years. Eleanor's wine glass shattered as it slipped from her fingers. But you're a social worker, she whispered. You make $45,000 a year. I smiled. That's my volunteer job. My real job is running Compass Holdings, private equity, distressed assets. Last year's revenue? $127 million. My personal net worth as of this morning, $43 million. The silence that followed was suffocating. Victoria stared like she was trying to see through me. But how? We never knew. You never asked. You never wanted to know. I opened my laptop and turned it to face them. Compass Holdings began with a $50,000 inheritance from Grandma Rose. Remember her? The one whose funeral you all skipped because it wasn't a high society affair? The screen displayed a timeline. Property acquisitions, mergers, strategic pivots, all with my name behind them. While you were burning through trust funds and vacationing in the Hamptons, I was earning my MBA at night, passing my Series 7, learning the market, making moves while you dismissed me as the family charity case. Robert leaned forward, visibly impressed. Diana, you've been sustaining this family in secret. I nodded. Dad was proud. He never wanted you to know how close we came to losing everything. So we struck a deal. I'd take control. Discreetly. To preserve appearances. Keep the homes. Pay the bills. Protect the legacy. I clicked to the next slide. Bank statements. Maintenance invoices. Hospital bills. $890,000 for Dad's cancer treatments. $1. $2 million to rescue the firm. $400,000 in property upkeep. Victoria's voice cracked. But the will says we inherit. You inherit properties I already own, I said gently. Mother knew the truth. The will is her way of lifting the veil. I stood and walked toward the window, rain streaking the skyline beyond the glass. You spent years looking down on me, but while you were measuring worth in handbags and gala invites, I was building something real. Eleanor finally spoke. So, what happens now? I returned to the table and laid out 2 final folders. One contains new lease agreements, fair market rate, standard terms. You can stay in the homes you love, as paying tenants. Marcus's face flushed deep red. You're charging us rent? They're my properties, I said evenly, but I'm offering grace. The second folder, I continued, contains sale agreements. I'll sell them back, at current market value. Beacon Hill is worth $3. $2 million now. The vineyard property? $2. $6 million. Plus, of course, the capital I've invested. James's calculator app clicked open. We don't have that kind of cash. I know, I said. That's why leasing is the smart option. Victoria slammed her hand on the table. This is revenge. You've stolen our legacy. No, I replied, locking eyes with her. I saved it. And now I'm offering you the chance to rebuild, with eyes open. Robert exhaled in disbelief. Diana, you were the family's safety net all along. I nodded. And I'm done hiding. I looked at my sisters, stunned, hollowed by truth. You assumed I was weak because I didn't flaunt my success. But real strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it waits, quiet, strategic, patient. Then I smiled, gently but firmly. You wanted an inheritance. What you got was a reckoning. It gave me the space to build without interference. Now, the truth was on the table, along with my business cards. I slid them across the polished wood. Diana Matthews, CEO of Compass Holdings, I said. The sister you dismissed is the one who's been holding this family together. Victoria picked up the card like it might burn her fingers. Her voice was low. What happens now? I looked at each of them. Now, I said, you decide what kind of family we want to be. One built on honesty and mutual respect, or one that keeps pretending and resenting. I gathered my folders, calm and deliberate. The lease agreements are valid for 72 hours. After that, I'll need to make other arrangements. As I turned to leave, Eleanor's voice stopped me. Diana, wait. I turned. Her eyes were wet, her voice soft. I'm sorry, she said. We've treated you terribly, like you were less, and all this time, you were building an empire while we were just coasting, living off hand-me-down wealth and calling it success. I nodded. That can change, if you're willing. Victoria stood slowly. There was something fragile in her expression now, no longer superiority, just uncertainty. What would you want from us? She asked. If we wanted to repair this? For the first time that day, I smiled. Respect, honesty, and maybe an invitation to family events where I'm not treated like a pity case. Marcus cleared his throat. And the properties? They're mine, I said, with no apology in my tone, but they can still be your homes. I believe in family, even when family doesn't always believe in me. I left them there, speechless, while Robert quietly walked them through the legal details of everything they had just learned. 3 days later, I received 2 signed lease agreements. And a third envelope I hadn't expected, a formal request from Eleanor to join Compass Holdings as Vice President of Property Management. She had done some soul-searching, it seemed. Victoria took longer, but eventually, she called. She and Marcus wanted to learn, to understand what I'd built, not to take it, but to earn their place within it. Family dinners became different after that. Awkward, at first, but more real. They asked about my work, and this time, They actually listened. I learned about their struggles too, the pressure to look perfect, the fear of not measuring up behind the glossy facade. 6 months later, we were all seated around the dining table at the Beacon Hill townhouse, my townhouse. They paid rent now, but I let them make it their home. Full control of the decor, the vibe, the traditions. Eleanor had flourished in her role, raising the value of our property portfolio by 15% in her first quarter. Victoria had launched her own consulting firm, using her network. Yes, but building her own foundation for the first time in her life. You know, Victoria said over dessert one evening, I used to think inheritance meant getting something from family. And now? I asked. She smiled, really smiled. No gloss, no performance. Now I think it's about what you build with the family you've got. Eleanor raised her wine glass. To Diana, for saving us, even when we didn't deserve it. I lifted my glass of water. Some habits, I suppose, never change. To family, I said, not the one you're born into, but the one you choose to become. As we toasted, I looked around the table, at 2 women who used to treat me like I didn't belong. Now they saw me, not as little D, the afterthought, but as Diana Matthews, CEO, property owner, and finally, their equal. The documents that had stunned them in the lawyer's office now hung framed on the wall of my downtown office. Not as trophies. As reminders. That the most powerful inheritance isn't wealth. It's belief. Belief in your own value, even when no one else sees it. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you can use that belief to build something even greater. A family built not on legacy, but on respect.